Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products. Recorded July 7th, 2021. Good evening, Franklin.
Good evening, Edward. How's your day been? It's funny that I asked that because
I thought I was going to have a woe is me day, but it sounded like your day was worse. So I am just whining. Personal stuff today. Nothing with work. Having to deal with somebody that was shipping me something, and they supposedly had updated my shipping address to my new home, and it went to my old house. And my old house is an hour from my new house. Second time I've had to make this trip. Luckily, the people that bought my old house are really cool. Like, we held on to the box for you. I got it and I came back, and it's been that week that people are not doing what they say they're going to do, right? Either just don't say it, right? But prior to that, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is the long weekend, right? It was absolutely outstanding. My wife's best friend came down with her husband. We had a mini barbecue. For those that, we told everybody we have a very limited crowd. I won't ask your vaccination status. I know my wife and I are, if you feel uncomfortable, don't show up, right? So we got a big enough backyard, everybody spread out. My son came down. My youngest son hung out with me before he heads back to New York to got a new place to stay. So that was good. Then I came back to work, right? And Monday threw me off. Right, because Monday is, we recognize the 4th, but it's still throwing me off. Like, today doesn't seem like Wednesday. I'm good. I have no complaints. I'm telling you. I got Red Cup security. We're good with that. I had a person that pinged me from Microsoft, say, hey man, I'm listening to the podcast. I don't really do Twitch, but I like what you guys do. I learned something, but it doesn't have to be always serious, right? At least it makes me go look at something. All of my portals are up to date, so no more screenshots from the security team. They're talking about, oh, this is coming. It's actually, I can see stuff that are manifesting. But other than that, man, I'm good. We'll keep the podcast short. This is, to our listeners out there, this is sort of like those dog days of summer for podcasts. Franklin and I are busy lining up guests for the remainder of July and then portions of August. We're also lining up, topics to talk about. But you got to realize Microsoft is their fiscal end of the year, July 1st. So the guests have sort of pushed out until such time. People are taking time off. There are a lot of releases coming out. Virtual conferences are starting. Aspire, Ignite. If you're at Microsoft, there's a Ready, which is internal Aspire of sorts. Aspire? No, it's in Ignite.
and everybody has to find out if they still have a job after the New Year's.
Not really. I haven't. Nobody's really hit me up and say,
no big reorg coming up.
Well, the reorg has happened. I've heard crazy stuff from some folks over there. It's my, oh man, stuff has changed, this and that. But I'm isolated, man. I've been labbing out. I haven't really been doing the Microsoft stuff. It's been refreshing because of what happened with AT&T and my internal network. So I ended up having to get some more Cisco Meraki stuff. So what else happened, for those who didn't listen to the last podcast about what AT&T did when they updated my router, I won't beat a dead horse. But needless to say, I have an IP address that's static. So what happened is when they updated my router, they changed that setting to dynamic DHCP. And on my Meraki, I have it set to look for a certain IP address for pass-through because I have it. It caused all type of havoc with routing because it's like, your Cisco Meraki is trying to find a viable network, Ethernet port. I'm like, what do you mean? So I had to go back and look, and I was like, well, it changed that. So once I set it, all the lights went green. So everything is working. I got some more Cisco Meraki equipment coming in. I'm going to set up a couple of more little firewalls just for some round robin type of firewall stuff, just to see what the logging looks like. Ceph is Ceph, but I want to see how different vendors tag their Ceph when it comes in, so we can differentiate in Sentinel. What else? I'm drinking a cold beer. Yeah, Red Cup is here. I think I'm drinking banana bread beer. I like banana bread beer. Um, Mrs. is in charge of dinner tonight. Generally Wednesdays. Got a gnat in here. And then I got a lean in light. My life is just totally discombobulated. Um, Everything's good, man. Tell me what's good in your life. I heard you got the freshest spring like water coming into your house.
Yeah, I just had no water today, so it's nice to be able to take a shower before the podcast. So a few things. It looks like they updated the SC200 content to talk about the unified portal finally, which drove me nuts because I was like waiting on the content. I'm like, all right, I just have to move forward because remember we're talking about getting the unified portal all the way back in like December, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then 1 week after the SC200 courseware ships, unified portal is available for everyone. So, and on top of that, Microsoft's really pushing everybody over to the unified portal.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a nice ZDNet article, all the Microsoft certifications. One of them out there was SC200. And they talked about some of the pros were, the Learn modules, and of course the cons were Microsoft Cloud App Security. Just joking.
Yeah, no, it's congratulations on that for those who are new to the show. A lot of that content and what you're seeing out there is the direct efforts of Mr. Frank Grimberg here. And
I watch it on LinkedIn. There's a lot of great comments about the exam itself and the content that's covered and so on. So I'm pretty happy to be involved with that entire process and see people happy with it.
So I got a little bit of slow time. I think I'm going to go ahead and take the exam again. No need for me to dwell in why I didn't pass. I don't know why I didn't pass. If I failed, tell me I failed. If you mark me as a no-show, tell me that. But at least I got my certification profile put back together. And who knew? I was able to get it so that my Gmail is the primary account, and it doesn't erase my my certification transcript. So I give it another shot, and this time I'll be on time. Like I'll get there early. And sit there. I know where it is now. I run by it. Let me tell you a little interesting fact. I didn't know this. The headquarters from Honey Baked Ham is not too far from my house. So I run by it. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Honey Baked Ham!" And the testing.
Do they give
facility,
out samples in the lobby or what?
They do.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, when the lobby is open, they have a little tasting area. You walk in, so they weren't actively letting people in, but you can see where they have it in. It's like a mock kitchen, right? You come in and get it. It's actually pretty cool. So the testing facility is actually in the building right behind it. So it's about 3 miles from my house. So now I'm not lost. I know where it is because it's in a building that's shared by a
when you
bunch
go
of
in there,
businesses.
do you take the honey baked ham, the sample, and then you put the Chick-fil-A sauce on it and eat in front of them, or no?
Oh, what you do is you get some of the Hawaiian rolls that you can buy in the store. You put the honey baked ham on it. You put some of the Chick-fil-A sauce on it. You mash it together, then you eat it.
Mash it together. Okay.
Oh yeah, you gotta mash it together, then you eat it. Oh, it's so good.
Hey, so while we're kind of waiting to get some of the other guests on, we talked a lot about some security stuff with inside Endpoint Manager, and I want to show some people. I've actually in the process of burning down my M365 implementation and putting it up into my training environment.
Mhm.
So we're going to share your screen, and I want to point some of these things out because we've talked about it so many times, so we've really never shown it and where it's at with inside that portal.
Okay. All right. Give me a minute here. In the interest of time, I found another cool feature. Sometimes I don't want everybody to see, not ossification is not security. Trying to make sure you don't see it is this is bad. I will happen to pass your resources, right? So this is actually my lab and it's publicly available, but I don't think we have any bad guys looking at my stuff. But you can switch between directories. And what's cool about it, if you have more directories that you're associated with and you want anybody to see your real working directory, cool part about it, you can hit switch. It will switch if you have the login saved to a directory. You may not have all the access, but you get the screen to be able to show it, right? Because something happened and I had a whole tenant set up in demos at Microsoft.com or the new word is transform, gone, erased.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, what happened? I just built this thing out like 3 months ago, which is the reason I tell people why it's good. Don't count on it being. It is a privilege and it is a freebie. If they decide to wipe it because they want to reallocate the sources to another data center or something, you have no say over that. They tell you that in the small print. Build your own lab out. Invest in yourself. Get you one E5 license, pay retail for it. You pay $700 for one license. And then maybe go get you a M365 Business Pro, buy the key, put it in there so you have two that you can play with. Invest in yourself. Quit looking for the free because you get what you pay for. So partners were like, oh my God, I had this demo set up for so-and-so, so-and-so. I had a customer client. Well, how long had you had been a demo? Well, I've been using it for the last 3 months. You set up the 90-day one. What you think was going to happen, right? You didn't even do the 1 year, so it erased itself. Always invest in yourself. Write it off as training on your taxes, however you do it. But if you can't afford $700,
this is not tax or financial advice show. But go ahead.
Yeah, this is not tax. You can't invest in yourself. Don't. All right, let me share my screen. I invest in myself. Shit, I paid for my own CCIE exam and lab. I wasn't gonna let my employer do it. I didn't pass the lab. I passed the written, which is odd. But I passed it.
I paid for my forensics 508.
Yeah, I paid for mine.
Yeah.
No, you're not finna tie me in because you paid for my cert, right? So what do you want me to do, man? Oh, let's talk about. Well, you want me to show you this, and I got like just 2 things to talk about, and then we'll give our listeners a little bit of update of what we're gonna be doing in the upcoming week. So this is gonna be really short for everybody today. What do you want me to do?
So I want you to share your screen and then go into the portal. I want to talk about the baselines that we always talk about.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so and endpoint security.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That's nothing. Hold on for a second. I'll go back to my lab. It happens. I have more, but this lab is going to be better. There you go. Okay.
Here we go. Go to security baselines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so out of the box, Microsoft gives you. So if you're so explain where we're at with inside here for everyone.
So one of the things that is vexing to a lot of users of MDE. MDE is not antivirus. It's not anti-malware. It's not the things that you look at when you're looking at Sophos, Kaspersky, and all this. It is an XDR and a security platform to be able to automate, respond, hunt, inventory, advanced endpoint management. So the way that you manage your endpoints from an antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spamware, whatever, is part of a lifecycle product, which is Microsoft Endpoint Management, formerly Intune. Okay. I know that a lot of Microsoft customers are frustrated, like, why don't you just make them one portal? It's because the products, while they seem similar, do very distinct and different things. Okay. You can onboard a device into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and not use this, right? Which is the MEM, which is helping you manage the things that you're familiar with from a Windows 10 perspective, which is that Defender icon that you see, that antivirus. That can be managed standalone, which is what happens when you buy it, just a Windows 10 license, whatever. If you're part of an enterprise environment, then the admin is managing it from SCCM or MEM, right? It's a life cycle and endpoint management that talks about the health and the vitality of an endpoint and the things that are built into the OS. When you want to manage this from a response, hunting, and an advance, you combine that with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So this is essentially Intune. It's been renamed to Microsoft Endpoint Management. Don't ask me why they call it that. All the words make sense. And I think Intune led to a bunch of legacy conceptions or perceptions, because right now you can use Microsoft Endpoint Management, or you can use SCCM. Really important. So if you want to manage what is happening with this, a combination of on-premise, GPOs, scripts, PowerShell, and Azure Active Directory hybrid or joint, you use endpoint security. This is how you configure baseline things on how your OS operates. So when you want to really know what you're configuring here, open up Defender and then just look at it. It'll say things like account protection, anti-ransomware. You know what? Why am I guessing? Because I can't keep it committed to mirroring. I'll just do this real quick and hand it over to Frank. So if I view the security dashboard, if there was standalone, the things that you can do in mass is virus and threat protection, account protection, firewall and network protection, app browser control, device security, device performance and health, and then family options. These can be managed if it's domain joined via GPO, scripts, and a few other things. But if you're looking at managing this from the cloud and pushing things down, you come to MEM, which is Intune. So I'll flip between both. So this is what our users are seeing. You're seeing endpoint management by virtue of MEM or /Intune. There you go.
Okay, so let's go down to attack surface reduction first.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let's go back to security baselines just to make life easier here, since there's stuff in there. So what these are Microsoft provided configurations for your endpoints that you can apply. So let's take a look at the Windows 10 security baseline.
And don't say the phrase best practices.
I said security baseline.
Here you go.
Okay, so we're going to create a new profile here. And basically, so we'll give it a name. So you're going to create a profile, and we're going to press next. And what you can do is you can modify the baseline settings to meet your specific needs. Now, what's interesting here is that all of these different categories here are not consistent across all the different baselines, okay? So when we take a look at the Defender for Endpoint baseline, right? A lot of that information is already in there, but it's actually under a different category. So let's take a look at, give an example, scroll down.
Well, let's do this. Let's show our users so they can get it.
I've been doing offensive stuff too long. I keep forgetting all this now. Okay, so let's press next. And so you'll see that they call this the attack surface reduction rules here in this first area here. Over here, try scrolling down. I forget the name of it now. Microsoft Defender, try that one. And you get a lot of the attack surface reduction stuff. So,
you know why, right?
Why?
I mean,
why call it the same name between the two different baselines for the categories? Why would you do that?
Well, this is assuming right here that you have MDE deployed. And this right here is assuming that you don't, but you want some of the same behavior. And so now you have to go inside here And so that you have a reference point about what it is, you do it here. The other thing maybe is, and this is unscientific, there's no technical article, this is just being in the field, is that you see that the focus is mobile device management, right? If you go here, it is attack surface reduction, and you look at, these are things that I can probably pin and go find where they have subcategories to be able to configure inside MDE if you deploy it.
Right.
And that's the biggest difference.
Right. But what people think is that, so when I've run into people, they actually think that you have to try to apply both of these profiles to the devices.
Oh, yeah. I see.
So then the question becomes, is there a priority in profiles? Is only one applied, and so on? I'll let everyone figure that out on their own. So I just think that it's kind of, if you take a look and do an audit between these two, you're going to end up going with, the Windows 10 version and adjusting it to the few options that are different over here that you'll want to take advantage of in there. And obviously, the most important thing I think that people need to take a look at is all of the attack surface reduction configurations, and also those attack surface reduction rules that I see a lot of people skipping out on and not configuring.
So let me tell you another reason. You got to look at it from I learned this whole thing, this microeconomic perspective. Shout out to Real Vision. And so you got to look at it that oftentimes the endpoint security that is sort of layman's, antivirus, anti-malware, Trojan, browser protection, that's not the security team a lot. I've gone to 50% of all clients, I go, who manages your endpoint protection? Oh, that's the endpoint team. Oh, no, that's not the security team.
Right.
They do something different. And so these are the ones that are writing GPOs, that are writing MDM policies, because they handle this, and if the company has a BYOD or a company sponsored device, they handle the mobile devices too, right? So if I had to baseline a guess, this is easier for the security people to tell the endpoint people, go do this, right? See how it's less choices, and you can come in and you can tell them to do these things. And so now these things manifest inside MDE, right? I can go look at these things. And MDE probably has a closer tie-in to this. But if I go here, notice I don't see block Adobe Reader from creating child processes. That's real mobile devicey, right? Because I may not want
scroll
you
down. Here's your attack surface reduction rules. Block Office applications from injecting code into other processes. Right. That's all ASR stuff. ASR rules.
That's all ASR, and they did it here, right? And there's a lot of choices here, but it seems to me that this is the better one, right? But because you're looking at, stuff like remote assistance and stuff like this.
That's what I'm saying is that when I talk to people, I see them looking at these two different security baselines, and I really want them to focus in on the one security baseline and configure it for what their specific needs are, and not really, you can do the audit for what's different or recommended, or when they update different versions of this to see what's actually changed, and go from there. And that's the important thing. Now, I know that you had a client that just basically did a huge rollout. Did you see them utilizing this, or? Mm-hmm. Okay. And
so they end up using this one.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I can get a reason why they chose this one. And then they also end up doing this.
So they ended up using the Defender for Endpoint, not the straight up one, not the Windows 10 security baseline, is what you're saying.
Yes. Right. And they use, and I got to ask the question, they use this one and that one. Right. Because they wanted to try to rein in the rogue Chrome users.
Okay, but
right?
is Edge baseline still within inside of your Windows 10 security baseline information?
I don't know. Again, let me see. Data protection audit. This is the MDM one. File Explorer, Defender. I think they went with. I don't know why they went with the Defender one. Maybe because of just not understanding that they could have gotten into this
Right. And
this
then
way.
they're losing out on everything else that they actually have to
There
configure
it is.
here.
That's my screen. Yeah.
Everything else that they have to configure in here.
So I tell you what we can do. We know enough people to get some MDMS. We can get I know a Intune person, and we can get them as a guest. And we need to come in and say, "Are you the right person to talk about why this is this way?" And we'll pull them in. I know a really good person. And I'll reach out to him and ask him why. And then here's the other thing: why these three? So which one has the tightest security? Windows 10 security baseline, Defender. We know what Edge is, right? But which one would be tighter? So, there are different ways to measure this stuff that you can go out and do a side by side and then push it out. So I can configure both of these and then push one to one device and one to the other, and then ask someone like you to have at it and see, or see what Sentinel reports back or whatever. But I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know because this thing is still see, Intune documentation. So there you go, right? So if it says, I think maybe we need to read the docs and say, okay, what's the difference? But I'll find somebody, man, and we'll get somebody to come on and say, hey,
Well, I
what
mean,
is
my
it?
big
Yeah.
thing here was first and foremost, we've talked about security baselines and deploying it to your managed devices. So I wanted to show people where this was at, right? And then, I always talk about the attack surface reduction rules out there, or just attack surface reduction in general. So you can, and taking advantage of that, even though that's basically all that is basically available to you with inside the.
Well,
Um,
and then you if you add a can of worms to it, if I go directly to ASR and I choose attack substance reduction rules and get create, now I can
yep.
get very granular about what
But
I
these
want to
rules
do.
are still available to you in those baselines. But you can, if you want to do something outside of the norm or whatever that's
Mhm.
available to you. And I have to say, don't go off this page. These settings in the attack surface reduction rules are critical. I'm going to be doing some more testing over the summer and dealing with some attacks and so, but yeah, so far these see like block PSEC and PS exec and WMI commands and so on. So those are the sort of things that are very important to configure to make it much more difficult for the attackers.
So, in the realm of federal and agency and government, is STIGs still a thing?
Don't know.
So having those, STIG is one of those super hardened things that they've have a gold image of an OS. This is how you configure it. This is the golden image. I wonder how this would line up to a STIG, right? Because what would happen if I just block everything? Everything is blocked, right? No audit, no anything. Just block credential stealing from Windows local security. Like this is a big thing. We had Christopher Munez on. Like not enough people do this. We asked him which one was the one he would configure. This one right here, right? You know, and do that. And I think one of your biggest things is turning on how many people are using TVM, right?
Right.
So you know, this blurs the line between what we do and what an endpoint management person do or a lifecycle person.
And so that's why in the SC200 course we're very much into saying you need to know about attack surface reduction on Windows 10 devices so you can talk to the endpoint team and make sure all of this is configured the way that you want. And so this is one of the things that we've talked about many times. I just wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to see it when we had kind of, we didn't have guests on, so we could use this time to do that.
So let me this goes beyond just talking tech. This goes about career choices too. You can make a career out of this if you have an organization that understands the value of somebody who understands this. This is not easy. Because if I look at the choice here, right, block untrusted, unsigned processes that run from this. A lot of time we don't hover over this. This little hover has become my friend to understand just from a high level. When set to yes, untrusted process execute will be blocked. So sometimes, well, yeah, I want to do that. That seems very benign, doesn't seem like a bunch of impact. But unless you understand the organization that you're working in, this could have a huge impact. Now you got salespeople in the field who are used to scanning, taking pictures, put on USB drives, then bringing it back to the computer, put in, and trying to do something. Now I can't do anything, right? You didn't realize that their processes include something that looks like a file process, a system process, but it's really just them copying and moving. So these are the
I mean,
things.
that's why these configurations have audit modes. So if you take a look at the options there,
Yeah,
audit mode, warn, disable, so on. So you have different different modes because they knew that, hey, if you just shut everything down, then you're going to deal with that situation.
yeah,
Which also at that point in time allows you to say, okay, configure these to be specific. On these profiles, you can target specific devices by tags and so on. And at that point in time, you can
well,
configure
I'm
them.
always about a business opportunity. I think you and I were talking about we should get in the business of writing custom detections for Sentinel and for MDE, right? Think about this. You come back here and then you go to, we played around in endpoint security. So we played around in baselines and we played in and just started from scratch, right? Think about if you wrote this, and I don't know how you can export this. I don't know if this is JSON, but I don't see a way that, I could write a template and
I
sell it
deal
to a
with so
customer.
many of these different policies and so many different areas. I'd have to go back to the docs. For some reason, I think that you can do that here. You just have to, so go back to security baselines. And if you click on one, export,
Oh,
go
sorry.
back. See the export button?
Okay.
So this gives you, so what's nice about this though, first of all, is exporting it out like this gives you the ability to see all of this stuff instead of having to click through, seeing it in an Excel sheet. And I think you can modify an Excel sheet and then create your own baseline and send it up. But I deal with so many different areas of Azure as, blueprints and policies, and I could definitely be getting that mixed up.
Yeah. And so one other thing I didn't realize is that if you have multiple baselines, you can compare the difference so you know what you're doing. So that's
Right.
pretty
So
cool.
if Microsoft updates, there's some things about when you want to apply the baselines, but then you can do a comparison of the
Hmm.
previous baseline so you know what's changed.
I very rarely get into this, right? Um, this seems to be an afterthought to customers. They get
Right.
MDE deployed and they realize, well, I can't manage my antivirus. Yeah, you didn't read the blog post that manage my MDE pilot, and it specifically goes about and say, hey, this is what you need to do, right? And
Yeah.
and
I mean, I'm
so
big on attack surface reduction in general right now, um, which is a big area, but this is one of the areas that I think really helps on your deployments.
mhm, mhm, mhm. And
So that's really
so
what I wanted to show you. Well, we had this short show.
well, one thing here, notice that it shows how you pivot. See, it says setup Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So when you click on that, right? Look at that.
Right.
Yet another thing, right? iOS for Defender for Endpoint. I got it all. Like I said, this is my lab. Nothing really in here, right? You know, number of days until partner is unresponsive. So, I don't know what that means. MSSP, MD connection. Yeah, so setting up MSSP type of stuff and doing that. And so there's a lot in here. It is making your adoption of the M5 security stack and the outlining technologies a commitment, right? If you configure this stuff and you follow the docs to talk about common security practices rather than best practices, you can really set up a hyper resilient infrastructure to even these so-called zero-day attacks. Even the ones that are Microsoft centric, such as the Principal, the one that seems to be getting everybody's attention, because you set up enough alerting that, and then you got somewhere that alerting can bubble up like Sentinel. You can catch most things, right? MCAS is going to just yell all day long, right? Whether it's crying wolf or not, it will, and it talks very well to MDE now. And I was working with a client, and MDI was making a lot of noise, and I was like, "That's the last product from Microsoft you want making noise." And sure enough, they saw all type of lateral movement, LDAT reconnaissance doing this, but they had set up a Nexus scanner, Tenable scanner that was automatically doing this and bouncing between subnets, right? And so it was just doing its own little automated scanning. So it ended up being a false positive or not a real alert. But you can see that it still says security, but it looks very MDM-ish. And I tell our listeners that are watching this and are listening, if you are any Microsoft product and you see a configuration parameter and you see the little icon with the eye in it for information, hover over it. Don't guess, just hover. It'll give you an idea at least where to go start, because some of the stuff is not very intuitive. I stay out of this. I think I told you from the first time that we met, it should be, what, it'll be 3 years coming up here, maybe. I don't like this piece of it. I don't like Intune. I don't like endpoint management. I don't like this stuff. Just like I don't like AIP projects. You will never get out of them. When you get into device compliance, and I'm sorry,
Give those to Brody.
Yeah, we get those to Brody. I got anything to do with information protection, I'm sending it to Brody. He's a guy. And so look at this stuff. These are the things inside the endpoint security that if you just had a standalone Windows 10 machine like endpoint detection response, account protection device, you can't tell where to do it. Well, you can see mine is syncing and talking between this stuff, but so I'll just
Well, I think that this functionality is very easy to fall between the cracks, because some of the things within inside the security portal should be in endpoint manager also, and vice versa. So I just want to point these out to people, and also the confusion and the baselines drives me crazy, because they don't really jump out and say, okay, do an audit, see what's different, and how you want to deploy that. So those are just the important things.
And it's a good thing that if you're bringing on the MSSP to claim to have Microsoft chops that are going to help manage these endpoints, if they don't have a thorough understanding of this, you probably need to vet them a little bit more. They're not mutually exclusive. You got to vet them. If they don't ask the question, who manages your endpoints? That question has to be asked, right? Because if you don't follow the docs to at least understand what and how you're going to shoot your foot off, like for instance, putting your devices in one AD tenant and then installing MDE in a totally separate subscription with a different domain name, and why they can't, and they're not enrolled, why you can't do anything, you didn't read the docs, right? This is going to get better. I think we've had some people on the show from Microsoft in the product group to say eventually this is going to come to a convergence, but nobody would commit to a date.
But I think there's also the education of the clients to make sure that they're utilizing this. I mean, and taking advantage of it. That's really what it comes down to.
It's a lot. Yeah, but
all right. So what do we have coming up in the next few weeks? You're the person that brings in all the guests. So
let's read the guest list.
You're gonna hold everybody to it now.
Oh, you're right. I'm gonna put their names out there. How do I stop sharing here? I don't know how to stop sharing.
I'm pretty sure you're gonna end the whole meeting.
Yeah, I don't. There's got to be something to do this thing, right? That's not it. Well, that's fine. How about that? Just look at that, right? So let's. You always get me to do stuff.
Yeah, down at the bottom, I think you can do your stop, or at the top, maybe.
Bottom or top, man. Let me see here. Do.
You Teams people don't understand Zoom.
I do not. So yeah, let that stay there for a second. All right, how about I do this? How about I do this and bring up this and go here. There you go. Buy Bitcoin. So upcoming, we're going to get a guest that's going to talk about Azure Sentinel and notebooks and how to use them to create a hunting platform for you. So she's going to come on. She'll be here in August. We're going to have someone here to come on and talk about Azure ADX. Am I correct? Right. He'll be on next week. This is going to talk about Azure Data Explorer. Okay. I have another. Say again.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I am trying to get Suzanne on for Microsoft, and I'm looking for. She's a product group manager. I don't know what product she specifically focuses on.
We'll wait a few weeks. Everybody will find out where they're.
We'll find out.
Product
right?
they're on, anyways.
Yeah, we go. We're gonna have another MCAS guest. I have another security and compliance person coming on to specifically talk about insider risk, the product, not just the concept. And then there's a new role at Microsoft called a Zero Trust GVB, but we're going to figure out what Microsoft is trying to do with the Zero Trust stuff, right? And then the other thing that I would like to get, we have yet to get a Defender for Endpoint person on, right? I'm not endpoint, Defender for IoT. So I will get a Defender for IoT person to come on and talks about what that is and how it's relevant.
And how not to get billed.
Yeah.
After you do the trial.
Is read the dot. And then one more guest, because it's a specific topic that I want to talk about. Thomas is coming on to talk about Azure Blueprints. I'm sorry.
Oh,
so the guest next week is going to be talking about Azure Blueprints. So I got a card here of guests that are coming on. I'm trying to check the name off. I'm trying to get confirmation. I want to get two gentlemen, Yuri and Talanda from the product group for Sentinel, to come on to really talk about some SOC.
Well, let's get an endpoint manager person on, so then we'll be good.
Yeah, I know the guy. I'm gonna put his name right here. And
all right, that sounds good. When's your next race before we head out?
I don't know, man. I ain't even really feeling motivated. I think August 14th. There's a race here that I've always supported. It goes to the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I've always run the race, right? Outside of in support, whether I show up or not. I don't know, man. I'm not really feeling motivated. I ran today, man. When you run in 90-degree heat, man, you got to question your sanity a little bit, man. And but I don't know yet. I had people in my house since last Thursday. This is the first quiet. I just enjoying the quiet. I don't really want to think about it. I actually went for a run today, and about 2 miles in, I just started walking. I just walked home. I just stopped. So I don't know yet. I did send you the picture.
I told you to send me a link so I can buy it. I'm interested in buying it.
Oh, I'll find it and do it. But to our listeners, yeah, this is a lazy podcast. We just want to show that thing. This is where we go in and we set up the guest. There's quiet time. A lot of conferences coming up. So this is a wait and see type thing. And plus, I'm labbing out. I'll tell you guys how my lab is going to work. I've deployed the MDE network scanner, but my lab is small. I'm trying to convince a customer to run it across their multiple subnets. And I told them I'll do it to you for free, help you out with it. And they were worried about impact to, user machine. Like, you don't put it on every machine. You put it on a Windows 10 machine that's designated as a scanner for that subnet, and let's see what happens. Because if you'll notice, I'll go back, and if I go here and go to
So, yeah, the got a question from Trip in here. He said, any tips, lab setup, how to run pointers, etc., be appreciated. So, Trip, it all matters what you're trying to accomplish. Brody was going to set up a Defender for Identity scenario, and there's actually a complete walkthrough to set up Active Directory and so on to to go through the steps and do the attacks and so on. So it just depends upon what you're trying to accomplish with your lab. So the lab that I'll be building this summer has to do with running training courses. So it has to have M365, Active Directory, everything synced to Azure AD, maybe and some other configurations, and then of course I have to do all my attacks to generate the data for Defender for Endpoint and other things. So just depends upon what your goal is.
Yeah, and that's true, right? Try to set up your lab as generalist at the beginning. Don't really try to worry about very specific configurations. Get it up, get it stood up, get the appropriate licenses, and then write it down. Don't Easter egg. Don't like, oh, this is cool. Be very deliberate in what you're going to deploy. And then that would,
yeah. I actually I use Camtasia and record all of my deployment or all of my lab setup work, especially if I'm writing training material, because the first time you set up Defender for Endpoint, you're not going to be able to set it up again because it's already initialized everything. So some of the things under M365, you have to realize you're not going to be able to do that again. So I use Camtasia to record it all so that I can go back over my notes.
Yeah, when I was doing a bunch of stuff with a product, an internal project Microsoft called Fish Hunter, you have to save these tokens, right? Because you can't see them again. Like when you set up tokens so that you can have application registry, it says copy and paste it somewhere. You won't be able to see it and change it again, right? So this is what I've been playing with for the listeners that can still see. So I'm playing with device discovery, which is a feature set inside MDE. I want to see what it does. So on my little minuscule lab, scanning 3 or 4 machines, it's easy, right? I got one subnet, well, 2. I got a lab, actually 3. My lab, the house, and then a training. But I want to see how this operates in an enterprise that has multiple subnets and WANs, and get them to designate a machine on each one of these and get back. So
I'm sure there's a deployment template for you in Azure to spin up 10,000 machines to see how it goes.
I can't afford 10,000 machines. Hence,
yeah, I'm going to be doing all my stuff in Azure, all through virtual machines, and
yeah, I'm gonna do mine. I got it.
I mean, I don't have a server room like Edward sits in.
Yeah, well, it was unused space. And here's a cool thing about it: I can now see where all the machines have gotten onto networks and wireless. That's a cool feature. Like I didn't monitor it, but now I can see where my machines have been playing. These are the different SSIDs that they've authenticated to and passed traffic on. This is really cool to understand what your users in the fields are doing. And that, like this is my lab. You can see all type of stuff, right? But look, United, I've been on a flight. Verizon, a hotspot. Don't know what that is. You can just see. So this gives you an idea of what things are happening inside that, right? That Secrets and Now, I stayed at a Hyatt. I don't have no idea. I got on somebody's network. So this is sort of that little tidbit, good to go, nice to know type of stuff.
Yep.
Then you can do an authenticated scan. So I want to make once I get this to a customer that will use this in mass across a real enterprise, I'm going to do a show on this and see what comes back. So I'll get it deployed, wait 2 weeks to see what comes back from them, and then I'm going to make a show out of it.
And one of the things about knowing the assets that you have is very important in dealing with your attack surface reduction. Mm-hmm. All right, sir, I need to head out.
Me too. It's been a short podcast. That was very cool to talk about that particular topic. Sometimes we talk about the technology, but we don't really talk about how does that work for me to do my job, and then why is this a pain?
We don't show it so people have a frame of reference.
They have a frame of reference. So for those that wasn't watching on Twitch, what we did was we got into the Microsoft Endpoint Management, go through it and take a look at the security baseline profiles, and then go down to the Defender for Endpoint on the left-hand side. Look at the differences, and then maybe come up, why am I using this versus the other? My homework is to go find someone that can explain this, because I don't know. All right.
Thanks, sir. Until next week.
Yeah, until next week, sir.